Hello and welcome everyone to the Tech Sharmit Podcast. Today I'm here with another special guest, Mr. Mike Davison. Mike has joined us all the way from England, and if I talk about his expertise, then he is a well known IBM champion who is consistently contributing for the IBM community through his advocacy activities. There are plenty of things that we can discuss today, and we are going to discuss in this particular episode. So we will just start this session. But just before that, I would like to thank Mike for joining us today. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Thanks, Amit, for that wonderful introduction. Just a bit of background about myself, really. I started in IT operations way back in 1987. I started as a trainee mainframe operator out of college. And that was back then when we had IBM. It was an IBM mainframe, a 4381. I remember it well. And we had 3375 disks with 256 megabytes of storage. And these things were the size of a fridge. So that's where I started. I quickly moved up to become an IBM mainframe systems programmer. I went on to be a senior operator at a global data center. And then I moved on to being a systems analyst, a disaster recovery specialist. And that was where I picked up really getting into the other facets of IBM, which is AIX. And I also learned WebSphere MQ. I then made another move to a large insurance company where I was an IBM I specialist, and we had a Power 595. And there we also got IBM Blade Centers running AIX. And I also, at that point, I started to pick up Linux. This was around 20 years ago now. So my current role, I work for Fortra. We're a software security company. We used to be called Help Systems. We're based around the IBM I, is where our roots are. But now we cover lots of different applications such as mail security and phishing protection. But my specialist role, really, as a guy who can speak all three languages of Power, which is IBM I, IBM AIX, and the various flavors of Linux that run on that run on Power, puts me in quite a unique position because I'm able to translate different ideas across the different operating systems. So you often find people are very specialist on IBM I, or they're very specialist on AIX, or they're very specialist on Linux. And a Linux person wouldn't necessarily know what an IBM I was or how it worked. And I can talk about all three platforms and tell people the same things, like what's a service on Linux, how does that work on the IBM I? Well, it's a bit different, but the principle is the same. So that puts me in a really unique position in the industry to be able to do those three things. And my current role, I'm a team lead for our support for primarily IBM I, the various products that we support throughout Europe. I manage a team of 8 who are throughout Europe.
Okay. Yeah, so like it seems like you have touched all kind of domains for this IBM, all platforms. So that's really inspiring. Like we're good to
Absolutely. I've stayed away from Windows though.
yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous with Windows, but yeah, someone else can deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we would like to hear more about your journey as an IBM champion. So my first question is related to the same. Like, what are some of the most exciting trends or development you see in the IBM Power, security, and system administration, and how do you stay ahead of the curve in these areas?
Well, IBM just continues to innovate all the time. I started back on the Power 5 chip. Now let me think, we're probably going back 15 years, maybe 16 years when the Power 5 was out. We're now on Power 10. Power 11 is due to be introduced next year. And the difference between Power 5 and Power 10 is phenomenal. Back when I was working on the 595, I had in our data center, one of the largest frames in Western Europe in terms of compute power. And that just pales into insignificance now with the Power 10 frames. They've got more cores per chip, they've got larger caches, better clock speeds, improved instruction sets, better memory management, and of course, they're far more power efficient. So moving from even sort of like a Power 9 to a Power 10, the money you will save in terms of power consumption is just amazing. It makes it worthwhile to continually improve your hardware and swap up. And IBM make these improvements on every release of the power chip. So for me, it's IBM's continual innovation that keeps me interested. In terms of security, specifically for IBM I, in the last release of the operating system 7.5, we got better password security level 4 with better encryption. Things like default user profile passwords were no longer the same as the user ID. So they used to have, if you had a user ID that was called Mike D, then the password would default to Mike D, which made it very easy to hack if you didn't set it up and change it. They've also got rid of security level 20, which is great, amongst other things. And the IBM AX technology level releases also serve to enhance the base operating system at regular intervals. So in terms of security, IBM are continuing to improve, and they're listening to what the customers want. I think in terms of system administration, the biggest change I've seen, and whilst I was looking into this, it's happened a while ago now, and that's Ansible. Ansible's where it's at as far as I'm concerned, and it was acquired by Red Hat in 2015, which is nearly 10 years ago. And you know what? I hadn't heard of it up until about 2 years ago. Okay. IBM acquired Red Hat in 2019, but in the last 2 years, I've seen a big uptick in Ansible usage and people using it. And I would say it's a great thing to get into because for system administrators, it's a really good tool. And if you learn it on one platform, that skill is portable to another platform. So it's the same. I mean, okay, the installation might be slightly different on Linux than it is on IBM I, but the configuration is exactly the same whether you're on IBM I, AIX, or any flavor of Linux, or even Windows. It's a bit like WebSphere MQ. That is platform portable, and that's a skill that I learned a long time ago, and it was great because it's the same on this system as it is on this system as it is on this system, and it's uniquely transferable. So yeah, Ansible allows system administrators to create perfectly repeatable processes that they know will execute every time, providing you get it. You tell it what to do. Of course, put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, aren't you? But having that skill to do repeatable processes and then schedule them to run periodically is a system administrator's dream. In terms of staying ahead of the curve, really, I subscribe to IBM's tech updates and their security advisories. I get a lot of email, and I also subscribe to several industry mailing lists, such as Tech Channel and Built on Power, which literally every day I'm getting interesting stuff into my email inbox that I digest and I sort of curate that for my followers on LinkedIn. And I will give my followers the stuff that I think is relevant to them. I don't sort of copy and paste everything across because I don't want to bombard people with information that's not relevant to their roles. And my area of interest and speciality is specifically anything IBM, anything that's to do with sysadmin, anything that's to do with security.
Okay, so yeah, you have witnessed like the entire growth of IBM system, I would say, because you have explored each and every aspect of IBM systems, their trends. But I think you have also heard some myths that is around the network, that people are still believing, like they believe that IBM is going to dead in the upcoming years. So how would you respond to this thing?
So again, into IBM's going to be dead.
Yes, we also heard that IBM is not no longer in use. Like these are the myths that we hear, right?
Oh, the myth, right? Yes. So the myth around, especially IBM it's an old platform.
Right.
People, I think the myth is people don't know what it is at the higher level. So your chief information officers, these people up at high level who don't work at the necessarily or haven't worked at the grassroots level, techies like me, like you, like the people who follow us. The IBM I've heard of people, yeah, we're going to come off the IBM and we'll be off it in 3 years. 10
Yeah.
years later, they're still saying that. And the reason is IBM and in fact the Power frame itself is the most reliable product on in terms of, back in the day we used to have hundreds of Intel servers in our computer rooms, hundreds and thousands of them. But the Power frame with its logical partitioning, you're able to condense all of that down into one frame. And I have only, in my whole experience, I've only ever known a Power frame to crash once. Okay,
Okay.
and that was in a previous role. They are hugely reliable, and the return on investment of buying them is so much better than buying sort of Dell server racks and things like that and using VMware. So this whole myth about IBM's a dying breed, I think what it is people don't understand it.
Right.
That's the You say Wintel, Intel, Linux, yeah, they get it. What's the cloud made of these days? It's 90% Linux servers. You say IBM AIX, they're like, you say IBM I. So I think it's a marketing issue that IBM have there. Certainly everybody I speak to in the industry who knows IBM IBM AIX, they are very enthusiastic about it because not only the operating system is proven and reliable, the hardware it runs on is proven and reliable as well.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much, Mike, for clearing this doubt, because I know I have received many emails also regarding this thing, like those, especially those who are new to this system, who recently started working on this. So they always text me or send me mail that is it going to dead. So I have explained them many times, but I think now with your answer, they are they will
I,
feel
I,
that.
I will I will give a piece of advice.
Yeah.
Windows engineers, you can
Mm-hmm.
get 10 for a penny. Okay. IBM AIX, IBM I engineers, and Linux on Power engineers are not so common. So if you learn those technologies, you'll pretty much never be out of a job.
Right. Yeah. Completely agree with this.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, Mike, as I know, like apart from your expertise, I also noticed that you have good experience as a speaker, because you have presented on at various conferences, and that shows
Yeah.
your commitment to sharing knowledge. So, my question is like, what drives you to take on these roles, and what do you hope that attendees take away from your sessions when you are in a conferences?
So I love to share knowledge. I've worked a few jobs where people around me protected their little bubble of experience and knowledge and refused to share that. They wouldn't share what they knew. And I found this most frustrating and troublesome. And I've always wanted to share whatever knowledge I have in my head to make it available for others, whether that be training it in a formal training environment or passing it on informally at a public speaking event like Common or the iUser group. There's many people out there who might be young, or they're just starting out, or they have no experience of the technology or the stuff inside here. And I love passing that on. And I hope that attendees learn something, and even if it helps to just confirm what they already knew, then it will have been a worthwhile use of their time for sure.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So another thing is, when you are in a conferences, okay. So what strategies do you use to ensure that knowledge is shared effectively, and that there are no single point of failure in your training programs? So how you make sure that yes, you have delivered what you are intended to deliver there within your audience?
So I have a phrase from my time in the Air Force Reserves, and that's prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance.
Okay.
And if you can remember that, it's called the 6 Ps. It's all about preparation. It's a bit like decorating your house. It's 90% preparation. You have to sand the walls, you have to clean the walls, and it's 10% actually doing the painting. So it's all about the prior preparation, having your training plans, having the knowledge. You can't teach a subject that you know nothing about.
Right.
So you have to have a good knowledge of your subject. Ideally, you have to be a subject matter expert in the field. So anybody can stand up and read a script, okay? But to actually be able to pass on that knowledge and explain it in maybe different terms and make it simpler for a lay person to understand a particular process or technology, you have to be able to know that subject intimately to start with. And I always start with a lesson plan. If I'm doing training, for example, I start with a lesson plan. I break it down into what do I want the student to learn by the end of the session? And then I look at how am I going to achieve that? I might then break that down into smaller sections. And then I plan it out and I practice with timings. So I will have a stop clock. And I will time each session. So I know that, okay, this first introduction is going to take me an hour. I'm going to talk about 20 minutes about this, 20 minutes about that, and 20 minutes about that. And then practice, practice, practice.
Okay.
Always practice beforehand. And that first time you stand up, you'll be nervous and scared. But, you know, your confidence will come as you get more experience, which comes from doing that practice.
Okay, so yeah, the practice is the key for the successful delivery of the content that you are intended to deliver to your audience.
Yeah. Knowing the content, having a good plan, and practicing and getting your timings right, and having everything that you need. Prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance.
Okay. So, like in your opinion, what are some of the key qualities of a good IT leader? Like one is this practice, right? That leader, like if someone is leading the IT sector in an IT sector, so they should practice more, as you mentioned, right? So what other qualities, key qualities you see in a good IT leader?
IT leadership specifically for me, it's people, processes, and technology in that order. And people make up 60% of that, processes 30%, and the technology is 20%. The technology is turned on and it's working, then it's fine. You know, it needs looking after. This is just my opinion, of course. But a good leader I've been a team leader now for nearly 2 years, is a person who listens well. IT leadership is about communication.
Right.
And listening to your team, appreciating your team, and looking after them is very important. So it's all about the people thing first, and then you make sure you surround yourself with those clever people. Even if they're cleverer than you, it doesn't matter, because you then trust and empower them to get on with the job. I don't want to be standing over somebody telling them what to do. That's not my job. My job is to encourage them and help them, and support continual personal development, because IT, whatever sector you're in, it's a changing landscape all the time. Yeah, we've gone from Power 5 to Power 10. We've got new types of disk drives. We've got, you know, all types of technology and operating system improvements. So we have to have continual personal development. And then you give your team challenging work and you allow them to make their own decisions. Okay. And then you support them if they get it wrong. You find out what's gone wrong and you help them fix it. That's the role of a good IT leader for me. Someone who leads from the front by setting a good example, and not a person at the back who's cracking the whip on the team. That doesn't get good results from it for anybody.
Yeah, I completely agree, because technology is something that we can learn by the time, right? Because technology is also improving day by day, so that thing we can learn. But these skills are agree that these are very important thing. Communication skill, listening skill is very important, because if you are leading as a person who has responsibility to take their team together, right? So yeah, these are the things.
Soft skills over the tech skills any day.
Right, right. Okay. So another question is for those person, let's say if someone is trying their best but they are not good at public speaking. Okay, so you mentioned that yes, practice is something that they can do, but what other advice would you like to give to those or to someone who wants to improve their public speaking? So what
So
kind
I
of
can, I can
Mhm.
I can go back many years ago to when I was about 8 or 9 in a school assembly, and I'm sure
Okay.
we've all done it.
Right.
Where you're standing in front of people for maybe the first time in your life when you're very small, and it can be very frightening. But I had a wonderful teacher whose name was Mr. Creasy, and he taught us how to speak to a room of people without looking at them. And what he did is he made I think it was a cuckoo, a bird cuckoo, and he pinned it on the wall at the very back of the hall above everybody else. And when we were on the stage at the front, he's always told us, you talk to the cuckoo.
Okay.
You talk over the heads of everybody. You don't look at the people who are looking at you. You look at the cuckoo and you talk to the cuckoo because the cuckoo's listening and the cuckoo is interested. And you focus on that, and it takes away your gaze from wandering around like this and wondering what people are thinking of you or looking at you and what they're doing. And that was a real skill taught at a very young age.
Right.
Um, and as I said earlier, public speaking is all about confidence,
Mhm.
and confidence will come as you get more experience, and the experience comes the more you practice. So the first time you go out on stage or you go in front of an audience or a room of people, um, you're going to be nervous, and yeah, you're probably going to suck. Yeah, you're going to drop your notes. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to overrun. You're going to underrun, but if you don't take that first step, you'll never know. And you can't then take the second step and the third step and slowly improve. Um, it's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can stand up in front of a room of 300 people and address them, and that is that practice and experience over the years. And there's another tip I can give if you're just starting out and want to do this is amongst your friends, you play a game where you each have to speak for 60 seconds to your friends on a subject that you know about. So again, it's about knowing your subject, and you have to keep speaking for 60 seconds without any breaks, without any pauses, without any ums and without any ahs.
Mhm.
And then you do that, the next person goes, and then maybe you go around the table and maybe you'll choose another subject. It could be dogs, cats, gardening, cooking, favorite films, that sort of thing. And it's a social activity. If you can do that in front of your peers, then you're stepping in the right direction to doing it in a room of people for training, for example. And there are plenty of videos on YouTube. Obviously, there's a lot of videos on YouTube about public speaking, but you've got to sort out the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. Um, and public speaking and training are two different things completely, but they do require you both to stand up in front of people you've never met before, possibly, and speak confidently.
Okay. Yeah. So like here in India also, like this is very common thing. Students are supposed to share their thought of the day during the morning assembly, and they you like we were when I was in my school days, I also used to do the same thing. We are like we are asked to read the newspaper and to share our thoughts, or they like students picked any particular topic to speak for. So yeah, these are the some we can say habit that for sure enhance our public speaking skills and provide us some confidence, and that is what matter at the end. So yeah.
Absolutely. And it's all good skills for life, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, these are the things that you have shared. I'm pretty much sure that it is very beneficial for those audience who are new and who are going who want to become a good speaker in their life, so they can utilize these things. My another question is related to the challenges and setbacks. So how you stay motivated, or especially for your for the things you are doing, maybe your advocacy activities or anything, when you let's say if someday you face some challenges or setbacks, so how to manage those things? and how you are managing those things?
Well, I think I'm my own worst critic. I'm highly critical of myself, and I'm very much a perfectionist. I hold myself to very high standards. So if I start a job, I must complete it to the best of my ability. But there have been occasions when I've not been able to complete something, or I've hit a setback. Um, and when faced with challenges, the best thing to do is to stop, take a step back, take a breath. And I always, as an analyst,
Hmm.
look for the logic, look for the facts, and work the problem logically, as maybe Spock would say. Um, and when you do face challenges, perseverance is also important. Knowing when to keep going, to resolve the problem if it's within your capabilities, and knowing when to stop and put your hand up and say, I need help. That's a real big thing. There's no shame in asking for help, and in fact, it's better to call it out earlier and tell the boss, say, look, it's beyond my capabilities. This one, we need to get somebody else in, or I need assistance from so and so, and be appreciative of or cognizant of your own skills and your own capabilities. You may have been given a task that is beyond your capability. You don't know that until you necessarily start it. Again, goes back to that prior preparation and planning. You can apply that to really any sort of situation. But yeah, stopping, thinking about stuff, looking for the logic, and knowing when to ask for help, and also persevering when necessary. I certainly remember one time when I had to work through the night, and I persevered to get a job done, which was sort of re-imaging a tape drive for one of my previous employers, because without it, we couldn't run any backups, which made us vulnerable. So I think I started work at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I didn't finish until 10 a.m. the next morning. So having that perseverance to carry on is also important.
Okay, okay. All right. Mike, could you please tell us a bit about your experience? Because while I was doing I was going through your social media platforms on your website, so I got to know that you are also experienced, like you have experience of RAF reserves. So could you please share some memories from your RAF experience?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I served for 13 years in the Royal Air Force Reserves,
Hmm.
as an air cadet instructor. I was the commander of a squadron for 9 years. I trained at the Royal Air Force College, Cranwell, in England, where all Royal Air Force officers go to train. Bear in mind, my training was not as intensive as a regular Royal Air Force officer. However, it did teach me many things, and some of that is leadership and teamwork. And one of the leadership models we did learn was called John Adair, which is action-centered leadership, and it looks at the needs. There's three levels of need: the needs of the task, the needs of the team, and the needs of the individual. So you might have the task needs might be, I need this equipment, I need this amount of time. The needs of the team would be they might need to be brought together. We might need specialists to do a particular task. We might need to do some team building with them. They would also need feeding and shelter. And in terms of individuals, the needs of the individual, what does that put that person need, or an individual needs to feel appreciated. They need to feel part of the team. They need their own food and shelter and facilities, somewhere to sleep, somewhere to rest. So you have to take into account all these different needs, and you sort of put them all together, and like a Rubik cube, and eventually you come up, and that is what action-centered leadership is about, is those three needs. The other big thing is communication. Communication must always be upwards, downwards, and sideways,
Hmm.
because you have to communicate at all levels. In terms of training people, you have to have everything ready and available. lessons plans, equipment, skills test, and so on, and the equipment necessary to do the training with. It all goes back to that prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance. So those are the two real good skills, the teamwork and the leadership that I've brought from the Royal Air Force Reserves into my day job, so to speak. And I was also taught public speaking by the Royal Air Force, so I got a bit of a head start there. But those skills I brought into my role that I'm in now.
Okay, all right. Okay. So, well, like Mike, there are many things that we can discuss, but due to the limitation of time, I would like to ask one question, which is related to the IT security domain. So, I would like to ask, let's say, if someone is not so aware about the IT security, cyber attacks, so how would you introduce those person to ransomware? Because nowadays ransomware is like, you can say it is very active nowadays. So how would you introduce ransomware to those person who are not so aware, who are not from technical background, and what piece of advice would you like to give or share with them to take such precautions that that will help them to like stay ahead from this type of attacks?
Yeah. First rule of thumb, don't click on dodgy links.
Okay.
Okay, so ransomware is the encryption of hard drives, and you are effectively held to ransom by the threat actor, and they'll encrypt your hard drive, and then they'll want you to pay money to get the decryption key. It's as simple as that. Often you'll pay up and they won't supply it, and then you're
Hmm.
still in the same position. If you do pay up, you're very likely to be hit again because they know you will pay. So very simply, you click on a dodgy link on an email and you download something, or so you run some program on your Windows machine, and it will start to encrypt the files and the disks on your machine. And if you've got network attached drives, you can encrypt drives on other remote machines as well, and therefore it can start to propagate through the network. It's really, really dangerous, and it's really not a case of if, but when people are going to get hit. And I'm not talking about individuals at home with their Windows PCs. We're talking about corporate desktops, people with a corner shop, okay, people with a laptop who are running their own business. In terms of what we can do to prevent it in the industry, apply standards. The Center for Internet Security, if you've never heard of that, it's a non-profit. They're called CIS. They have standards for just about every operating system out there that you can apply, and they're free to download. Doesn't cost you anything. I'm a real big advocate of it. I found out about it 15 years ago, and everywhere I go, I evangelize about Center for Internet Security. Go look it up, cissecurity.org.
Okay.
You can secure your known admin accounts, root on any Linux or Unix machine, QSEC offer on IBM I. You remove unnecessary services that are shipped with the systems, things like FTP and Telnet.
Mhm.
They are all insecure. They pass passwords across the network in plain sight. Okay, so someone with a password sniffer can steal those. Having strong password policies, reviewing user accounts, monitoring everything, applying updates, patch, always patch, continually patch. And most importantly, I think, is having a backup and a disaster recovery plan, because 54% of all ransomware victims have to use restoration from backup to fix the issue. If you don't have a good backup and you haven't tested your plan, you're not going to be in a good position to recover from a ransomware attack.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for sharing such a good advice. Like, I think now people have idea how to deal with this type of attacks and how they can take the precautions in order to be safe from this such attacks. So thank you once again, Mike, for joining us today and for sharing your expertise with our viewers. And we are like very thankful to you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, Amit.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.